Okay, so it's a great pleasure today that I'm going to be interviewing someone who is going to share a bit of their story with us, tell us a little bit about what their work is like, about how in this strange time that the UK and the whole world finds itself in, how this person is loving himself and loving his neighbour, and how faith plays a part in that. So without further ado, who are you? What do you do? And where are you right now?
So hi, my name's James. I work as a doctor at Wythenshawe Hospital in Manchester, and I'm currently in my bedroom, if that answers the question.
Yeah, fantastic. What are you doing in your bedroom? Do you stay there all the time? Or?
Not all the time, unfortunately. I'm just finishing the end of my isolation after getting COVID. So we're nearly there, we're nearly out. I'm free as of tomorrow. So looking forward to getting back to work.
Right, fantastic. Do you know when your first shift is yet?
So I'm back on Thursday. So I actually get Wednesday off, which is quite nice.
Right, fantastic. And is there any particular thing that you're involved in? Do you specialise in medicine? What do you do?
Yeah, so my actual job at the moment is general surgery. Although, as you can imagine, everything's a bit higgledy-piggledy, and so we're kind of a little bit of a mix of everything. So we're kind of covering what used to be the general surgery wards, but on there, you've got various kind of surgical specialties, you've got medical patients and so forth. So it's a bit of everything really, rather than anything specific anymore.
Right. Okay. So how's it feeling in your hospital, amongst your colleagues, amongst other doctors that you perhaps trained with in other parts of the country?
Yeah, so actually, to be honest, I don't know if enjoyed is the right word the last couple of weeks, but I think there's been an incredible kind of coming together of everyone, which I've really, really loved, and kind of just a fantastic supportive atmosphere, everyone having each other's backs very well. When I obviously tested positive COVID, I had to miss some of my night shifts, someone just jumped in to cover them, and kind of everyone just getting behind each other, which is really good. Obviously, I think things are very different at the moment. We're maybe seeing a lot of really sad stories that are quite difficult. We're maybe having to change the way we work quite a lot, which is putting a lot of things up in the air and making everything a little bit chaotic at times. But I think largely we're staying on top of stuff fairly well. And I think the biggest difference is just having a supportive staff team. I feel like when everyone comes together, you can pretty much get through anything. So yes, no, in amidst all the chaos, it's actually been a really good couple of weeks.
That's fantastic to hear, because we know that the NHS is under pressure and all of that, and everyone's trying to do their part. But to hear that there's good morale amongst doctors that you know and who you're working with is great. So one of the reasons I want to talk to you today and hear your story is that we're reflecting at the moment as a church about how we love ourselves and how we love our neighbours. And I wonder, for you, who really is on the front line, who's experienced COVID yourself, what is it that you do just to look after yourself, to love yourself in this time? And how is it that you're loving your neighbours in the midst of this kind of overwhelming need?
So I think it's a very good question, and I think often I find the best way to love yourself is actually maybe to not focus on yourself and understand that you are part of something bigger. One of my kind of favourite verses in the Bible, which I imagine is familiar to a lot of people, is Philippians 4:13, where Paul talks about, he says he can do anything kind of through Christ who gives him strength. And I think for me, if you look at the verses preceding that, where Paul's talking about actually he's learned the kind of secret of contentment, he's learned how to kind of be in need, he's learned how to have plenty and how to be content kind of regardless of the situations he's facing. And I think for me, I often just bring myself back to that. And I realise actually my contentment doesn't come from my current circumstances. And so when maybe the anxiety starts creeping in, or you start worrying about X or Y, just actually realising I'm part of kind of God's bigger story. I'm part of his bigger plan, and kind of reorientating my perspective a little bit to that often seems to, just help me deal with sometimes when the worries and the stresses are coming, help me maybe deal with sitting at home very bored for 7 days in self-isolation, maybe dealing with difficult situations on the ward where you're having to phone families and have difficult conversations, or deal with quite upsetting stuff that happens with patients. And I think often if I left myself to my own strength in those moments, I think I would struggle a lot. But sometimes just remind myself, actually, I don't do it in my own strength. I do it as part of a much bigger story for one who is much bigger than myself. And I find often that is the best way to look after myself, by not thinking about myself, if that weird logic makes any sense.
No, it's lovely to hear that the Bible is there inspiring you in these times as well. That it's not just for the easy times where life seems easy and we just float along, but a moment like this. Thanks for sharing so honestly. And so, I mean, it would be easy for me to go, oh, okay, you're just a doctor, so you're loving lots of people's neighbours, but for you personally, how do you love your neighbour in the midst of this? What have you been up to?
Yeah, so I think it's a really good question. I think there'd be two things that jump to mind for me. The first one is I live on a street where there is lots of elderly and vulnerable people. Just getting a piece of paper, scribbling on, my name is, here's my mobile number, is there anything I can do to help, and kind of dropping that round, I think is something everyone can do, is super, super simple. And just make sure that some of the people who might fall through the gaps otherwise get the support that they need. I think I have definitely used this time, certainly over the last 7 days, to maybe touch base with some of the people in my life that I know won't have many people touching base with them at the moment, and kind of sending those texts, making those phone calls and so forth to the people who I know are going to be really struggling with their isolation. So I think that's a definite one. And then the other one for me is I run a charity which cares for kind of vulnerable people in our sort of local community. And being very honest, we've had a massive knock to our fundraising income. And so for me, it's been knuckling down and working hard to try and maybe make sure that we can keep running the crisis support services that we run, and the work we do in terms of supporting people into education or employment. And I think if you are, you don't necessarily need to be running a charity, but if you've got a local charity that is doing really good work to kind of support vulnerable people during this time, a lot of charities, probably similar to us, are taking a hit on their incomes right now as fundraising events are being cancelled and so forth. So please just consider supporting your local charities.
Fantastic. Really lovely to hear your story. Great to just clock in with you and to just hear what you've been up to in the midst of this. And so as we draw our interview to a close, it's been lovely to speak to you. I haven't spoken to a doctor in the midst of all of this. It's funny, isn't it? I've spoken to a lot of people, but I haven't spoken to a doctor. And so I hope that you feel that there is a deep sense of gratitude in the country of people supporting you, and so grateful for what you're doing for people that we love and those we don't know that you're caring for in this time. Is there anything that you would want to share with folks as we close this interview? It might be there's something, or it might be there's nothing. Anything as somebody that's working in this wonderful thing called the NHS.
I think, yeah, I'd just say there's quite a lot of us, a lot of my friends who are doctors and so forth, and we have kind of felt that overwhelming sense of public support for the NHS, which has been amazing. I think the only thing I would maybe just remind people is that, you know, the NHS aren't the only people doing some incredible stuff during this time. I've got lots of friends who are, you know, working in Tesco shacking shelves, who are having incredibly stressful times at the moment. I've got friends who work for the charity that I run, who are kind of also on the front line supporting very, very vulnerable people. I've got friends who are out there supporting lots of elderly people who are isolating. And whilst it is incredible to receive all that gratitude as part of the NHS, I think I'm always very, very conscious of the many, many other people who are maybe having really difficult times at the moment. Being very honest, I'm a doctor. I'm protected at the minute in terms of my income and things, but I've got friends who are self-employed, friends who maybe fall through the gaps in terms of the government's business support schemes. A lot of people who I know are isolated and vulnerable and on their own. And I think there's just huge numbers of other people who really need support. So in the midst of all the fantasticness which is supporting the NHS, let's just not forget about some of those people who are maybe falling through the gaps a little bit at the minute, because they, to be very honest, probably need the support more than I do at the moment. And so, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, it's been great to talk to you. Thanks for your time. I hope your return back to work goes well, that you don't have any ill effects or COVID lasts longer than perhaps it might. So just wish you well, and know that we pray for you and all doctors as a Methodist Church regularly. So thank you for your time and go well. Thanks, James. Good to meet you too.